Well, a warm welcome, everyone, and welcome back to Backhand Compliments. Again, we're going to be talking about the Opens side of the Nationals draw. It was a great tournament, and we're looking forward to breaking that down with you here today. My name's Dan. I'm here with Greenie, and well, before we dive into that, I would like to make a big shout out to all of our Patreons and our supporters through YouTube who have helped us kind of deliver on that Nationals. It was the best Nationals so far, at least from my perspective, as I was sitting on the couch from home. 2 streams, excellent commentary, and the camera work and the cool camera that was like in the huddles and stuff. Like that was awesome. So, and that's a thank you to all of you who subscribe through the membership program. So, if you are a member through YouTube, please hang on to it for another month or two. Ulti-TV is going to be at the London Invite. So there's going to be 5 World's Games teams there, not just the Australian Crocs, but from a couple of other countries as well. They're all attending the London Invite. And then also some under-24 games as well. So hold on to that membership. It helps us deliver more games. And you'll still get some more content out of it. A couple of fields will be streamed from over there. So we're looking forward to that. But Greenie, your thoughts on Nationals? You got to go and you were there as part of the commentary team.
Yeah, look, it was. I think it was one of the best Nationals I've been a part of. It certainly helps to not be playing it and to just taking it in. And for first time being able to follow the women's division, but the men's division, of course, it was great. Ulti-TV covering it. But it'd be nothing, of course, without the players and the dedication that they've put in to the season. And I just thank all the players for their efforts. It was tough. It was a heavy track. They were 100-minute games, and that actually played a role. So definitely some teams in the back end of the tournament dealing with injuries and fatigue.
Yeah, that's a monster time cap as well. Most tournaments, you might play to 80 minutes or even 90 minutes, but to go to 100... most games are going to go to 15, which had an effect. It was a tough physical tournament, and threw up some great games. I think, Greenie, you've made the slideshow, so let's jump into that as we have a look. So let's just slideshow. Here we go.
Yay.
So, The crew. So run us through who was there, Greenie, and who was doing what.
Oh, we had. It was brilliant for me. It's the first time I've done this sort of gig, but the commentators there, Moz and Avril Tam, Simon's not in that photo, and Blair Munro, as well as M. Jager there in the bottom right. So that was fantastic. But the crew, this is the first time I've seen, and for those who have not been part of an Ulti-TV production, they are doing an incredible job. Rex and Mike Palmer, particularly on the mothership, as they call it, sort of managing all the dials. I don't know how they do that. They're like Doctor Who in the TARDIS. But also big shout out to Jay, top right. He was producing, so he was a voice that was constantly telling what camera to go where and a whole lot of stuff I didn't really know about. But yeah, a great crew. CC was doing a lot of the camera work, as was James. So yeah, great stuff. And Felix, the kid, the wonderful, wonderful kid, was there as well. And Jack Lilwall, font of knowledge, great cameraman. So yeah, fantastic. But as you said, just stay on. You'll find that for those who bought their membership, it'll come up for the 2-month subscription. Stay on. You'll get incredible action next month at the London Invite. You're going to catch 5 World Games teams going at it, which is incredible. And throw into that the Blue Bottles and the under-24s from Canada. That's just the mixed division. But also you're going to see the Goannas and the Stingrays in the other divisions as well. So for Aussie viewers, there's going to be a lot of Aussie content, as well as highest level Frisbee. You've also got the Tokai super team put together by Patson going at it and see how they match up against these World Games teams.
Well, that'll be interesting. Stefan Rapazzo, our foreign correspondent through Ulti-TV. Let's move on to the AUC wrap-up because it was a storied tournament and a brilliant tournament. Let's just
And sorry, just on that, big thank you to AFTA put on a great show, and also Caroline for the photos, and you'll see her little sign there wherever you used the photo in this slideshow from Caroline. So get onto Facebook and support her. All right, overview here. Well, obviously, Ellipsis taking the gold in a canter, 15-8 against Sunder Slice. We'll talk about that. But they went through undefeated. Hoss, to me, was the team of the tournament in terms of just punching above their weight and just playing as a team. That I think was a brilliant effort. Chile, unfortunately, lost 2 double game points, in the semi and in the bronze. And Wildcats lost Nick Whitlock, and that was the end of their run. Fyshwick we'll talk about. So look, it was there were stories everywhere. I predicted wind, and that meant there was no wind. We had 18 universe point games across both divisions, and so a really close competition. Lots of injuries, and it was a heavy track, so it was quite soft, which is unusual, obviously, for Adelaide. They haven't seen a lot of rain, but they got a bit of rain for the event. 100-minute games we talked about. One thing, the men's final coincided with the bronze, women's bronze and placement games, so that's something to avoid next time to give the men's final the showcase. Of course, the women will say that, hey, we've suffered with that for many years, so guys can suck it up.
Yeah. And it's always that challenge of scheduling of where do you place it all. It's a scheduling challenge that I faced, and I didn't solve it. So if someone manages to solve that, I look forward to it, because there's this real tension between player well-being and then the product that you're putting out for spectators. I was a big fan, or I floated an idea a couple of years ago about playing night games, having showcase night games. In 2013, they actually did that here in Newcastle.
Well, 2012 was.
Yeah. 2012, sorry.
Yeah.
In 2012, when we hosted Newcastle, we had some nighttime showcase games, but we kind of haven't picked it up because, those days are long days for the players. If they, potentially they're getting to the fields at lunchtime, it's still, and then they've got to go to sleep and they've got to recover for the next day. So hard to have a good solution to, all right, how do you spread everything out over a tournament weekend? Look forward to seeing what people come up with in coming years, because the sport is growing. So what we're going to aim to do here is we're going to aim to break this down from the perspective of each of the teams, going from Sublime all the way up to Ellipsis, over the course of the next hour or so. Just depends on how much Greenie and I talk about each team, really. So let's just start. Team MVP. I love this idea, Greenie. I've been thinking about it since you brought it up in the women's side of things, and well deserved, because it does actually vibe with who Hoss were, who Juggernaut were. Sorry, at the tournament, they were by far the team with the strongest chemistry.
Yeah, well, just to explain to people, so this is the MVP points, but looking at the team that had the most players receiving MVP points, and Hoss had 11 of those, and that was more than anyone. And I think that was well deserved. The way they played, it was a next man up situation, and they gelled, and their offense gelled, and that wasn't the case for a lot of teams. It was the case for Ellipsis. So I think Ellipsis and Hoss, or Juggernaut, both had offenses that. And there was they didn't rely on any particular player or even a couple of players. It was across the board, so that was wonderful. But a shout out to Chris Stoddard getting the men's MVP. He was clearly I-Beam's best player, and he was the captain this year. So kudos to him. And then in spirit, Brisbane cleaning up, getting both Mammoth and Fuse getting spirit. So well done to Brisbane taking that home.
And then the Dulio. I love the Dulio. I love that it's back. Won by Dave Hall from Chile. That's Chile the team, not Chile the person. Who you'll see in the left-hand side of the frame there. Love that it came back. Looks like Connor McHale got absolutely stitched up. Sent in as a representative, notionally for Fyshwick, but he's still listed as running for Clapham.
Well, I put that in, Dan, because he wore his Clapham shirt.
I love that.
Yeah,
it's
so
the first time we've had a runner from overseas.
He repping Clapham. But, it was Dave Hall first. But
for anyone who hasn't seen the Dulio, the way it works is you lay down on the end zone line. You have to be barefoot. And then on go, you get up, you run to the other ends, and first one to the other end zone line is crowned the Dulio champion. They take bragging rights for the next year, and then they run it back and do it all again.
Well, it's a beach sprint start, so you're also facing you're lying
the
down
other way.
Yeah, and you're facing the other way. But as usual, as always happens with Dulio, it's a terrible start. Yeah, because it's all just ad hoc. But yeah, look, Dave Hall first, but then Daylight second. He was just so much faster than anyone. But then Nathan Diggum. So, and that's something to remark on, because I think Chile had the best match defenders in the competition. The speed and the stickiness of their players was really impressive. But Chile from I-Beam at the back, was the oldest in that group and clearly the slowest. But I tell you what, if it'd been run for another 41 kilometres, Dan, he would have trumped them all.
Yep, he wasn't even warmed up. Let's move on to the predictions that aged like milk or wine. Again, I take out the title of Milk Boy. We gotta run through this, because I think you did a really good job overall of picking kind of that top end. Wildcats, notably for you, being a couple of places out. Apart from that, you were hot on it.
And then remember too that my great failing was not picking the quarter of Hoss and Wildcats, which was a remarkable game. That was my game of the whole tournament. Unfortunately, Nick Whitlock being out, I actually would back to say that if Nick Whitlock played, Hoss will hate to hear this, but if Whitlock plays, they would have got over the line and won. But that's not to take away from Hoss and the run that they were on and the way they played and using all of their resources was just a win, for the ages.
Yeah,
and that was my game of the tournament. But because of that stuffed up the my places.
But for me, lots of wishful thinking. I don't know. My pick of Fyshwick coming second, just didn't pan out. Maybe in an alternate universe they could have got it done, but not on the basis of their performances at Nationals. There was just too many rough edges in the Fyshwick game. We'll talk about that more. I don't know what I was doing, thinking Ellipsis weren't going to make the final. Anyway, we'll live and we'll learn. I'm not going to bet against them in the future.
You still didn't lose out to the machine, so you're equal with the machine, and that's the inside-out predictions using that system, Dan.
Yeah, and I think Sublime coming last. That was a surprise, I think, because we both, fancied, Mammoth, Outbreak, I-Beam. These were the kind of teams that we were thinking. So Sublime had a bit of a horror tournament, and let's talk about them, because they had a really rough start to the tournament, didn't they?
Yeah, and look, I wouldn't say it was a horror tournament, and I know that talking to Jackson that he's looking for this group of players to peak in 2028. And I tell you what I saw at the tournament was they had good athleticism and good skills across the board. So that group of men that you can see there, they're good across the board. They really are. I tell you what, cruel Sublime. In the warm-up to the first game, James Glover, a defensive handler, pretty key for their D-line offense, does his ankle, fractures his ankle in warm-up.
That's an outrageous
in the first
injury.
point, they lose Aidan Deering to meniscus damage in his knee. So first point, they go from 19 to 17. So that is going to cruel any team. And in that game, they lose to Sublime, and they go on that whole day. They can't really recover. Lose to Manly, Fyshwick, Manly, and Ellipsis. So that kind of killed their chances of getting into the quarters. But and look at the turnaround here. So they beat Mammoth 15-9 pretty comfortably, and I think that's when their juice was still up. But then look at that last result, 15-3 against Mammoth. And by that time, they wanted to play. And I talked to Jackson about that game, and it wasn't like they just gave up.
Yeah.
Their offense just couldn't execute under pressure. And to be honest, I think these 100-minute games on a heavy track really told on those remaining players. And let's not forget that Jackson, Radu, and Gabs were also out by that final game.
Yeah, right.
So, but the knockout blow was Juggernaut losing that game. That put them out. But look, Jackson, very happy with the direction they're going. This is a good group of players.
Love.
Can I say one more thing about them? Watching them, they've got like an offense that's out of 2015.
Yeah, right.
They're relying on stacks with horse races towards the disc.
Okay.
And they need to show a bit of nuance in their offense, utilise the break side, try and get some broken play flow, and then switch across to the other side of the field. So I didn't see enough of that. But in terms of the actual players themselves, they're very good athletes with very good skills.
And I love a 4-year plan. So 2028, Sublime, here we go. Well, just on that, because that's what Heads of State did. They had a 5-year plan. They won it in 8. Let's not get caught too much on the numbers. But, definitely see it. Outbreak Mountain. You caught up with Oscar Turnbull, who topped the MVP charts, as you can see in the middle there.
Yeah, and, it was tough, okay. And Oscar said, look, they're pleased to have won a game. Remembering, this is a team that lost 7 players from last year. 7 Div 1 players from last year. And they had to play against a lot of these players. So that's tough. So they didn't finish bottom. It was tough. They had a lot of support for each game on the sidelines, which was great, from local support. They were disappointed with their I-Beam and Mammoth losses that they thought they could have turned around. In the game that we covered against the first one against I-Beam, they were neck and neck. I think it was like 8-all. And then they lost Brady Middleton, who's their coach this year and a leader, and the best receiver that Adelaide has produced.
Yep.
He gets taken out and he does his ankle while catching a goal, and that was the turning point in that game, and probably the turning point for them in the tournament.
Yeah, it was a huge momentum shift. I remember watching that game, seeing it. It was awkward and Sweet As it got caught underneath, and it was like, they were in that up till then, and it wasn't like Sweet As had taken over the game and he was doing everything for Outbreak. It just seemed like he was some sort of like emotional center or some like grounding presence. When he was on the field, they were just playing well, and then when he wasn't on the field, all of a sudden the cracks started to show a little bit. And so
the cracks certainly showed in his ankle, unfortunately, when they got the X-ray.
Really?
So it was fractured, which is actually better than if he'd done ligament damage, because he's really keen, obviously, to play for Hammerheads later on in W Buck in Portugal in November, and he'll be able to get there now because it was a fracture, and who knows if he had the ligament damage. But just looking, and you can see there, he got second in the 10 in the MVPs. Dan Roberts, so both Oscar and Dan are goeies this year. He was looking sharp. 30 was his usual self. Gal Cheng lost his brother to Chile last year. Sean Davis, but they've got Harry Buckland. They've got a few players coming through who are going to be really good. So this crew stays together, and they just get a little bit. I'd love to see them get a couple more top end players to usher them through.
Something I think Outbreak are doing really well. Sean Lace, Brett Middleton, and Andy Baddocks. There's three men who played in the bad old days of Karma, which was the original South Australian men's team. So you've got these old experienced guys who aren't trying to run the show, but are still there to provide guidance. So something that Outbreak are doing well. And so if Sean Lace and Andy Baddocks and Brett Middleton can pass on some of that knowledge and be that guiding presence for these young guns, maybe South Australia can really separate off from the bottom of the table, because you can see here, like, their best result in recent history was 7th. But apart from that, it's been, outside that top 8.
Yeah, and just a note on that, the 2021, that was in Canberra, and it was 7 teams, because a lot of the teams couldn't actually make it over there because of COVID. So it was
last anyway.
Yeah. Well, 7th, So, yeah, but yeah, look, to lose 7 players. They've got some really good young talent there. All right.
Oh, hold on. Next, we'll move on to I-Beam out of Newcastle. A mixed bag, only 2 wins across the tournament for them, but came at key times to see them finish in 10th.
They're a team, obviously, Dan, as you know, in transition. This year was Chris Stoddard captaining, but also with Luke Prosser. So it's great to see this transfer of responsibilities. Jake Winchester's the president of the club. He's doing a fantastic job. And I think Liam Prosser and Jake Winchester all really stood up in this tournament. And really, you could see that they're the emerging leaders in the team, and we'll see them playing bigger and bigger roles. They all had excellent games. Also, the 4 rookies. Remember, they lost 5 players from last year. The rookies stood up, particularly Adam Frendo had a really good tournament. So I'm hoping those rookies also become, the mainstays as they go forward and they continue to learn. But yeah, you're still looking at the chart there. So 3rd in 2017 when we moved to the 12-team Div 1, and then just hovering around the 4th to 5th and sort of owning the 5th place, losing the quarter and coming 5th. But the last couple of seasons, 10th. So this is, and there's a realisation that the old guard just can't keep it together anymore, and that the baton needs to be changed. We need to invest more and more in development in Newcastle. And there's a little window opened up there for a sister relationship with India and getting some Indian players over. I think that'd be really good, just to help the top end a little bit while they're going through transition, and also learning from these different nations in Asia.
And a challenge shared by all clubs in Australia. Any of these established clubs that have been around for a while, you get this old guard, new guard, young bull, old bull, situation where at some point you got to hand the baton over. Yeah, Sunder did it pretty well. All things considered, they managed to hand over the baton. It'll be a problem for Ellipsis in the future at some point, maybe. Outbreak, as I mentioned before, are trying to find their way through it. And how each team does it, you just got to find your way through the best you can. Mammoth out of Brisbane, a bit of a mixed bag for them. They struggled and then they dominated.
Yeah, and we've talked about this with their sister club Fuse. Looking at that chart there from 2017 and it's got that pyramid shape right around COVID. So they're another club that has really struggled in the COVID transition. Obviously, they got their first title in 2019, and then unfortunately got messed around for the next couple of years and couldn't compete. And unfortunately, they've sort of seen a decline. And in the Brisbane scene itself, there's still, it's one of these scenes that almost has a second club. They've got Brisbaneites now. And Brisbaneites is actually quite a strong club in Div 2, but they can't quite, either combine forces or for Brisbaneites to really shoot up. Anyway, looking at their results and talking to Zach Chados, and they really could have used Zach, I tell you, as another steady handler. I felt that they were one steady handler short, so their composure in big moments wasn't there. So that was a problem. Cal also got injured, Cal Spellman. He's obviously big for them. They've still got they've got good top end players, obviously Liam Grimmond and Scott Perry and Alex Leask. But yeah, they just lacking that composure. But look at the start, 15-14. That we talked about it just before, Dan. What would you say about that result, first game of Nationals?
It's just a hard follow-up to that. And like across Mammoth's results, okay, so they lose on Universe to Melbourne, to Juggernaut, 15-14. Okay, fair enough, you're in it. But then they go on to lose 15-14 to Fyshwick, and they lose 14-13 to Manly Mullets. And you've got to be thinking, well, what are we doing wrong here? Because any one of those goes the other way, you're in a different position. Two of them go the other way, you're in a radically different position. You get all three, all of a sudden, you're staring down a pretty decent quarterfinal matchup. So a mixed bag for Mammoth, and I think probably below what they were possibly capable of.
Yeah, I'm remembering that they missed
those games.
Yeah, and they missed Canberra Cup. They missed a key part of their warm up. Again, just the tyranny of distance and the weather in Brisbane, and that. And once again, Dan, remember we said when we saw them in Gold Cup, they were not putting passes out in front enough. It's like they hadn't picked up on the intensity of the defence. But that was still happening at Nationals, and they were putting passes behind players, and that was causing turnovers.
Yep.
But look, there's no doubt that they could have a better lead in. They've got some good athletes, just like every one of these teams in Nationals. So they've got big upside. Zach, talking to him, he was extremely proud of the team, maintaining the trust and belief in each other. And obviously when they got to that 9-12 bracket, they sort of cleaned up and got the ninth, which is testament to them. And then they won Spirit. So, good signs.
And whatever you do, I think that win your last game. Just whatever you do, just win your last game. You want that. You want that odd-numbered result that comes from winning your last game. I feel that it's better to come ninth and have won than it is to sometimes have perhaps come eighth. But some positives there that they'll have to work through and figure it out. And the Manly Mullets are just a solid year that seemed to be a bit of a learning exercise for this young Sydney-sided team.
It was, and that's exactly what I got from Noah Moss, one of the captains of the team. He felt that they're still finding their feet. They're now just getting their teeth into learning how to win at this level. And you can see they only came in 2023, came dead last, had a great year in last year, and coming sixth. And then they've dropped a spot now. I would say watching them, they lack discipline. Okay? I think missing Dave O'Brien, who's been their coach for 9 years, and that's not taking anything away from Geordie Richards. I thought Geordie was good. He was very good in the huddles in knowing what to do next. He was good at reading the tactics and going, all right, we need to clean this up or do this. But I think Dave would bring some discipline to this group, and I'd love to see the return of Wavy back as head coach, and I'd love to see the return of Archie back into the team. Did I say Archie Richards?
You might have.
No, Jordan Richards.
Jordan Richards, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, so you can. I think the other problem is it needs to be a complete team effort, and you can see the MVP points being shared around their known really good players. So yeah, Matt Zabel, Sasha Bell, Zach Zabel, Noah, Dave Andrews, Matt Calder. So the disc was in their hands a lot, and I want to see him develop. They need to look at Ellipsis, look at Hoss, and see how they move the disc downfield safely. I think their offense looked a bit stodgy at times because they were trying to find their key receivers.
And I think Manly Mullets in, Zabel, Sasha Bell, and Noah Moss probably have the closest replication of the pieces you would need to run an Ellipsis-style offense. So, if they were able to recreate what Ellipsis do, they're probably the closest team just on pure talent who might be able to do something like that. But something else I'd point out is, when you win your games, matters tons, right? They only won 2 games over the course of the weekend, but they won 1 game in pool play, and then they won their quarter matchup, and that put them in 8th. So you win at the right time in the pressure moments, your ranking can be very, very high. We talked about I-Beam, I think, only won 2 games, but they came 10th. So it's if you win at the right time, you win in those high pressure moments, you are going to get the result. And as the tournament played out for Manly, it was a critical universe point in point win against Mammoth that put them over the top. So credit to them, and look forward to seeing them next year.
And I'll just say that the defining scoreline for them, as pointed out by Noah, was 8-4. So they were down 8. They were up 8-4 a couple of times and then lost. And he was saying about the 100-minute games and the heavy track and the effect that had. It felt like they were very long games and they were always going to go to the distance. But then, to their credit, they did the opposite against Sublime. They were down 8-4 and then came back. So yeah.
8-4, hell of a scoreline. So Sunder Dice didn't get a team photo at Nationals, but we'll talk about them all the same. This is kind of, and you put together a bit of a graph to show how the Sunder Club is doing overall since their shift, or back to 2017 anyway, where they've been. There's always kind of one team that does really well, and then through the middle there, both teams were doing pretty well. Yeah, and it's been a hot minute since we've had a Sunder final.
Yes, it has, and not in the new era. But what was interesting, Dan, is that I was asking for hot takes from all of the captains and coaches of the other teams. One of the most popular was to say, "That's it for Sunder. They've got to go AB."
Yep.
Right. But then But you talk to Sunder. No way, Jose. They feel that this is still their best model for the development of their players and their club and how that runs. So look.
Here's a hot take then, and I'm happy to provide it. If they stick with XY, we will never again see a Sunder final. That's hot take part number 1. Hot take part number 2. I don't think they're going to win a national title ever again under that model.
Wow.
Which is a really spicy hot take. But I don't see that they have the depth of talent to roll Ellipsis. Ellipsis, it seems like Ellipsis just have more of a team at that level than Sunder can muster. And it's not because Sunder can't muster it. It's just that they're splitting it over 2 teams where Ellipsis aren't. So what do you do? Does that mean then that Sunder are just happy to be second fiddle and ever the bridesmaids for the rest of time? I get what they're trying to do, but at some point, it's about coming first. And boys, put it in the bag. You know, you had your time. Those dark years, the dark years of Sunder finals are behind us, thankfully. But would love to see them back and, winning titles again regularly. I just can't see it happening under XY. They need to stack a team.
All right. What I would say, I'm not sure I agree with that.
Yeah. Okay? Tell me about it.
Okay. Well, what I would say is that there's things in their favour. You know, obviously, they are another club going through a transition. It is interesting that here we are with the 15th anniversary from Adelaide, but it feels like 2010 was such a creation year for so many clubs and had so many stalwarts that have played these last 15 years. Right. Now, you look at who Sunder have lost from last year: Laddo, A. Shep, Fisher, Dave Andrews, Lucian, Mike Neal and Conrad, and others across the club. That's a lot to lose, but they are in transition. They're I think, developing like Braden Cheng, Tyrone, Josh Jamboy, players of the future. So I can see the pathway for them. I also think they need to invest in these partnerships. They're not partnerships. They're just happy accidents that they're getting this Taiwanese connection, that they've got Japanese players with them. They're going to Japan for AOUC this year. They have always had a connection to US clubs, and obviously they got Dr. Fungus this year, but they've had other players in the past, and that's been a real learning for them. So they need to invest more into that and still maintain their status as the top club in Sydney. And there is enough talent in Sydney to feed into the club so long as players can see that they have a role in that club and that they can progress. So I don't think it was lost, but I will be very, very surprised if they go AB. And I know that, for Dice, who we're talking about here, only winning 3 games, wow, that is tough. And what we saw in play was Dylan Bennett having to step up as more of a handler, as did Julio doing a lot of handling, and Tex behind the disc when those guys are more naturally downfield. So they really had to, sort of do a lot of the heavy lifting in the backfield, as handlers. I thought Dylan Bennett was excellent in the huddles, in delivering speeches and information, and reading the game, reading what was needed. So I thought that was something exceptional there.
Yeah.
But yeah.
See, this is part of the joy of being a pundit and not playing. Like, I can say some outlandish shit and I don't have to back it up, because I honestly think that just in general, AFTA needs to ban more than one team from a club. I just feel that for the betterment of our sport, it should go to, you get one spot per club, and if you want to send 2 teams, no, sorry, it has to come from a separate club. I feel like that's the path forward. Maybe that's my own wishful thinking. But, yeah, look, we'll see how it plays out, because whatever happens, like, the gauntlet has been thrown down by Ellipsis. They are looking so strong, and Sunder, they didn't have the answers. Not with Dice this year, and not with Slice either. Let's jump to the next team. Fyshwick United, my boys, they let me down. It was hard. You can see the results, right? Like, they started strong. 15-9 Sublime, 15-10 against Juggernaut. They win 2 double game points against Mammoth and Manly. They're sitting pretty after the first 4 games. But they copped the Ellipsis matchup, which, I mean, that's not necessarily the end of the road, but after there, they did not look good against Hot Chili. Hot Chili just shut the game down, and Fyshwick United's offense was not clicking.
Yeah, I said it to you when we were talking before the show, that their offense at times looked like they were trying to pass a pineapple from the pointy end, and it just looked painful. and disconnected. And, we talked, they bringing the whale in of Connor McHale. He's seriously underrepresented there in the MVPs, as we discussed.
I don't know what the hate is from the rest of the men's division or the Opens division here for the POM, but he threw more goals, he scored more goals, and he made more blocks than AJ in the 3 games we watched, and yet he's only got 3 MVP points? Come on, boys. Why are you going to do him like that?
He was huge for them. They loved having him there. I got that from all players and coaches. They've learnt so much for him. So the experiment, if you like, it was win-win, The tough thing for Connor is trying to make this offense work of Fyshwick's, and he didn't come in with the problem, or it wasn't his problem, but it was his problem to fix. And you could see that his turnovers came for where he was trying to make the offense work. And one thing, what you noticed and that I backed you up on?
Yeah, because I was watching this game, right? I think it was the Hot Chili game. And, McHale was making these moves and running these lines that we don't see too much. It's got almost more in common with a Japanese offense, where it's these inside runs, these inside lines where it's not a break throw, it's breakthrow adjacent, and you're kind of laying it on them pretty sharp to get them with an inside shot. And McHale was making these moves, and you'd see he'd make the cut, and the throw just wouldn't come because the window to throw into, yes, is very tight, but you could see that's what he was expecting, and that's what normally I would assume that's the offense that he plays in, because it was very natural for him. He'd give and he'd go and he'd make this line.
You're exactly right. He was trying to make that offense work, and this is something that Fyshwick just need to invest time in. How do they have a look at Hoss, have a look at Ellipsis? They are teams that their offense flowed, and a lot of the time it's about accessing the break side early and working it through with shorter passes in broken play while you got the offense of the defense on tilt, and then resetting and going again.
Yeah. There's a saying that I used to use. It's not an egg. It's not going to hatch. Stop sitting on it. Move it on. Get it to someone new. And McHale was running these lines, and it would have helped if they just trusted him a little bit more. But you could see the chemistry just wasn't there for that Fyshwick team. They weren't quite on the same page.
Note on their D. I thought their D was excellent, and
their D was
I think
top 4.
Standouts were Justin Byron and Alex Sanger. Alex Sanger has just gone in leaps and bounds. He's now obviously he played Blue Bottles in 23, and he'll play again, which is awesome. But his footwork's got a lot better, and his agility around the disc. So he's now a very potent defensive player. But he's also a pretty key downfield link man as well. So just being in the midfield and moving the disc along, he was. And then Justin Byron took pulling duties a lot of the time, and he's making a difference with his defence. And look, AJ, let's just take a moment. What a season for him! What a year he's had after getting knocked out of Barramundis, which again, I'll say it again, he should have been in the team.
Yeah.
But he's from there. He's just been unbelievable. He's just had an excellent tournament. So big props to him.
What an absolute champion. The Wellington Wildcats. You can see a very, very strong start to the tournament. Going to 15, and it didn't really ever look in doubt, I don't think, on the first couple of days for the Wildcats, at least until they hit Sunder Slice. I think the key game, though, and the game of the tournament, Greenie, when they played Juggernaut.
Yeah, Juggernaut, that was the game of the tournament. And unfortunately, they're on the losing end. Let's not forget that Nick Whitlock, their captain, key player, he went down. He got ligament damage in his knee in the Dice game, which they won pretty handily. but then they lose to Slice when he's not playing. And then they didn't have him for this game here. But they'd also, let's not forget, lost Josh Van Bergen, who was a really key player for them on defence. He's the guy there with the nursing the shoulder in the middle. So to me, that was key. But the game was still there for Wildcats to win. They've got a big game. They've got big receivers and big throwers. They like to boost it. But the consistency of Hoss, of Juggernaut, was amazing. Juggernaut were down, and then in comes TCAS. In the next, so they just go break, win, or they hold break, win, or something like that. But TCAS, he lays out to get the first break. He lays out to get for the goal to get the second break, and then he gets the layout D on the final break for them to score. So that's huge. But anyway, we're talking about Hoss. Let's talk about Sawyer Blair was obviously he's a big dude, but he did a lot of work in the handler space and making the offense work. So I thought he was really good. And Finn McKenzie as the defender, he was a standout. Tyler Hogg was he was great in the end zone. He often came down with a lot of scraps and on OND. So he was big for them. But look, for Wildcats, according to Nick, he felt that they had the best defense at the tournament. I actually think Chile might have had the best D, but they may not have had the best D offense. But Wildcats certainly had a really good match D defense, no doubt about it. They had a lot of good players, and they really missed Josh Van Bergen when he broke his collarbone. But the key moments for them was Nick again wanted to shout out James Bowen. He only got three points there, but he really held the offense, the defensive offense, together when they were down to 16 players.
So thank you to the Kiwis for coming over and they added to the tournament. And all the best to the boys who got injuries as they head towards the under 24s, because I think there's a few heading. Let's talk about Hot Chili and the return of Mark the Shark. The one thing I have to say, Greenie, about Mark Evans is he came in and he played like he is building up to a Worlds tournament. He was red hot. He was on form, and he was doing some just heinous shit with the disc. He dropped a backhand huck over someone, and they were 40 yards deep already, and he was just like, "Yeah, no worries, I'll take you on." And the defender had done nothing wrong. He was where he needed to be, and then just Mark Evans just making an outrageous throw. To come back at that level of form, what was he doing? Was he out there meditating under a waterfall or something?
Yeah, and considering last year the injuries he's come back from, had to have surgery on his wrist, thumb, something in there. He was supposed to play with us with Wombats in California in November. Had to pull out of that. So he was at a bit of a low point, it must have been, but I too was just so impressed and being there and just watching how athletic, it's just you sort of forget what an athlete he is. He was getting layout blocks every game that I saw, but he was also moving really well, always getting open against their toughest matchups. But then his throws were better than Gak's. And that's saying something because, of course,
it is.
Tom's one of the... So you're looking at two of the best throwers Australia's produced out there doing their thing. Unfortunately, it was also their Achilles heel, and the problem when you're relying on a couple of players like Chile did is the rest of your offense forgets how to operate when that's not working. And it tends to fall down at the key moments because you don't have the plan B to go back to. And this is why Juggernaut survived because they didn't have to rely on a couple of components. It was next man up, who's stepping up, who's getting the next throw. So at times they're in their 2 losses at the end against Slice and then Juggernaut. There were times when their offense looked like it was out of ideas and the cut's drying up. And where is this next cut coming from? We're going to have to boost this, And so, unfortunately, as wonderful it was, and we saw some magical moments where Mark Evans connected with his brother and vice versa, captured on Ulti-TV, and that was just. And that was with his sister. The sister was in Georgia airport, watching from the airport the live stream, and watching these connections between her brothers. That magical moment.
And the entire point, I think, of why Mark played for Chile, because I think Dave Evans has played there for a couple of years, and Mark, well known for playing for Sunder. So he, and like just a good, solid team overall where, James Osmond, Josh Lipari, just all of these guys, Riley Wood, all of them just chipping in.
Yeah, and what not on that list, Pat Christie, his first season with Chile, coming across from Outbreak, played really, really well. He was actually, I felt, a really key player for them. Obviously, David Hall, he's not appearing. Oh, he is in that list. Okay, fair enough. But Nathan Diggum was just key on defence. Their defence was, I think, the best match defence at the tournament. Maybe not their defensive offense, but certainly their defense was really gritty and really sticky.
Yeah, it was intense and it was physical and it was like lots of enthusiasm and energy and hard to get separation from your defender. Let's
last thing. Sorry.
Last thing. Whoa!
Look at the chart of their progress and how it all changed in 2022. They're 11th. Then they get booted out in 23. They go to Div 2 and win Div 2. And that seemed to have lit a fire. And then you've got Tom coming back. I'm not going to put all that down to him, but suddenly they're in 3rd and 4th. So this is big for the club in itself. And you can see these young players coming through who are already in under 24s, and they're going to be the mainstays of the club.
Next, let's talk about my boys, Melbourne Juggernaut. I got some messages right about how I shouldn't make predictions and all of this kind of stuff, and I'm like, well, look, if it gave you a little bit of fire, then it can't be all bad. And a credible performance by Heads of State. You can see over the last 3 years, it's like they've taken a little blue pill. It's headed north. It's headed in a good direction. And I think this team, best chemistry, most together team from Nationals, and were well rewarded for a gritty performance.
Yeah, no doubt about it. As we've said, their secret sauce was their next man up attitude, the distribution of the load across the team. That said, obviously, Mikey, Trong and Rowan were absolute engines in the handler space. And Luke Doyle was a real outlet for them long. Also, shout out to Per. Per didn't quite play the same role as Mikey and Rowan, but he also delivered dimes for long shots, but they were measured long shots. And then, of course, you've just got contributions from so many players. It's just amazing.
The offensive Heads of State seemed to be this real three-headed dragon, where it was Mikey Trull, Rowan Suvanadam, and Per Henriksen. And it just seemed to be next man up, next man up, next man up. And they were just able to recycle the disc. They all played on the same tempo, which is really important. a good example of teams not playing on the same tempo, shall we say, was Connor McHale and Fyshwick, where McHale was playing at a higher tempo, at least offensively, than some of the other players. Whereas Juggernaut, it just clicked, and it was perfect. And they were all on the same page. They're all playing at a similar tempo, understanding the offense really well. And they were miserly. It was hard to get the Frisbee back.
Yeah, and teams, this is the secret sauce of Ultimate. Teams try to do this every year, is to get on the same page, get on the same beat, to cycle a disc and not rely on individuals or long games necessarily. And they just found the secret sauce, you know.
They really did. They really did. And I stand by my original prediction that I thought they were going to do garbage. They proved me wrong because of their extreme chemistry and the fact that they have figured out, or at least they figured it out this year, how to balance that old bull, new bull kind of thing, where you can see Seb Bar,
Toffa,
TCAS, like all of these boys that were there at the start when it was Hoss, when it was Heads of State, Lockie McDonald, when they were dyeing their hair to come to Nationals, they've managed somehow to figure out how to bring something to the team without taking anything away. And we saw that in the final, right? Like, sorry, not the final, but down the stretch, TCAS, okay? Captain, previous guy who was the dude, and now is just providing this environment where the rest of the team is now starting to flourish and step up, and that baton is being passed, and huge, awesome for Heads of State.
Okay, a couple other things to note. And let's not sugarcoat it. Like, in some ways, it was a tough year for the club, and they had to go through lots of growing pains, call it what you like. They transitioned coaches from Cron Hudson over to Joshi Phillip, and of course his cousins, the Phillip brothers, are in the team and played fantastically. So big tick there, and you know, but also look at their second game of Nationals there.
15-10
they lose
loss
to Fyshwick 15-10. They were up 8-4 at half, and then went on a 2-8 run where Fyshwick just put the afterburners. We covered that game. I've never seen such dejected players. Juggernaut walking off after that game. It felt like history was repeating from the previous year. It felt like a low point. I was with some ex-Hoss players who I won't name, but they were saying they can't come back from this. This is a disaster, right? And it was just almost based on the way the shoulders slumped rather than the result itself.
Yep.
But
because they coughed up
they dug out of this.
But that game we're talking about, they coughed up a huge lead to Chile, where they were up by a mile, and then they gave up this string of breaks, and it just ended their tournament. So to see them cop that, and then cop it again, but then change the narrative and pull together, because I think from that point on, that's where the chemistry started. And it was like that belief grew in the team where they were like, okay, we can do this. Like, that's not who we want to be as a team.
Yeah, and that ultimate clash, it had to come down to Chile versus Juggernaut, didn't it?
Yeah.
For the 3-4, it was always going to be a one-point game. I felt like it was always going to come down to it. And what won was, teamwork over individual brilliance.
But one of the best teams that we've seen at Nationals in recent years, like it was hard to tell who was doing what because it wasn't always the same person. So watching from home, without the commentators, I didn't know who had the disc because it was moving quickly and it was moving through so many different sets of hands. And
look at that list. Even with 11 players getting a gong in the MVPs, you're still missing out some guys who really delivered. I'm thinking Lockie Eichner here and Hamish Menzies. Fionn Summers, is he in? Oh, he got in.
Yeah.
Okay.
Summers got in.
Both Phillip boys, they played really well. Like, Wilson Tran, is he in?
Yeah.
No, see, they had contributors everywhere.
And Cataviotis isn't named. Like, he's not on the list.
Yeah.
So, there's so many contributors, so much depth that they ended up bringing. And I thought it was too old, too slow, too much of the same. But they were, to their credit, amazing. And couldn't happy to be wrong. Very happy to be wrong about this team, because what they brought was a joy to watch. Loved it.
Well, Dan, and I copped it, don't worry, just as much as you might have copped it. But I copped it there at the event. And there were players.
Let's show something that we got sent after the fact. So we've got two of the boys just swinging the medals around, and good on them. Love that they
just
were able
reminding
to do
me that where I put them, 7th.
I had them way further down than that. So you're not the only one who made the wrong prediction there. And I think, like, with all of this, right, like, you're happy to be proved wrong, because at the end of the day, like, you want to see good performances, and they had a great performance. They had a great Nationals. That will be a Nationals for the record books, and something that, if they can build on that next year, continue to pass that baton over in this super productive and super supportive way, they're going to have a great time, and they're going to be a team for that top 4 for years to come. Yeah. Next, let's talk about Sunder Slice. It was...
tough to watch.
It was. It was a hard
final.
Because they really didn't have too much competition until the semi. Hot Chili, they had to come from behind there to get it done, but they got it done.
Well, and it was only Chile that they had close games with before meeting Ellipsis. And again, it was that the brilliance factor, and I think actually the Chile defence. So that Sunder always backed themselves to be better athletes than their opposition, but the Chile match defence proved to be a match for them. So that didn't work in their favour. And you can see the disappointment on some of these boys' faces from their team photo. Thanks to Caroline Cooper for the sports photography. But as James Bray caught up with him afterwards, as he says, it's still tough for him to reflect on it, but he recognises they're in a pretty privileged position to feel really, really disappointed and come second. So after a pretty good season. So, it's tough, but individually, I think we saw they really, Dr. Fungus, that really... He really shone for them. Also, Charles Patterson. Now, they're going to have both those players for at least a few years. Charles Patterson's moved over. He was really good for them. So these pickups that they've got were really good. But as we said, they've got some of their youngsters they can also lean on. And they're going to have to, because I think my understanding is that this could be the last year that we see Gavin Moore and also Tex. So I think they're stepping down from Division 1 at least. Who knows what they will be doing. But that's a huge end of an era. And with all those other players that I told you have stood down from weren't here last year.
Yep.
It's huge. Shout out to Rory O'Connell. He picked up 3 goals in the final.
He was great.
Played really well for him, not just catching, but as a link man in the midfield. He was a great return for him. And he was one of the originals from 2010, along with Gav and Xavier, I believe.
Yep, founding members.
And Jimmy Todd Hill, who was coaching this year. So, yeah, look, well, let's talk more about the final, because really the game came down to the final, and we can talk about it when we look at Ellipsis as well.
Well, let's do that, because I think it's probably a little bit unfair to talk about Slice, talk about the final on Slice's slide, because all in all, a great tournament for them. You know, they were one of the front runners. James Bray and Alex Gann were at times unstoppable. And then the final happened. But the Ellipsis Men, undefeated the entire way through and never really challenged. You look at some of the results there, and it's not close.
Yeah. We said in the very first game we covered the Manly game, we said their greatest enemy is going to be complacency. So it's going to be themselves just sort of not staying focused on the job, because they're just and to their credit, I don't think they ever did. And, you know, we've talked in previous shows about their transition. They've lost a lot of players. They've lost Tom Bissett and Roloff Dinkelberg, and also obviously Tom Tullett, the big one.
To retirement,
to, you know, and Rob Swan going into the coaching. So, you know, they lost all these players. They brought new players in. Yes, they've got some of the best players in Australia. Okay, and my own proclaimed GOAT, Sam McGuckin. But Rob Andrews, you know, John O'Keefe, and these incredible support players. You know, I call them support players, the incredible players in their own right, like Bill Foreman, Tim Achilles, but also Johnny McNaughton. You name it. They just have got... So they've got this probably really great starting line, let's say 8 to 10 players, and then development players. Look at Quarantine main guy. They pick him up. He's from Vanuatu. Just turns up because he's doing his degree at Monash University. Matt Daly is coaching Monash University, sees him. This guy's got to be in Ellipsis. And they develop him into a guy that's picking up 10 MVP points, which shows you the importance of development and where you get that development, and doing coaching duties, giving back to the community at the lower level pays dividends.
But also how you do it as well. Like you place players in a position where they can succeed. You know, you don't expect too much of them, certainly, but you also put a little bit of pressure on them to see, okay, can you learn from this? Can you get better? And like, Ellipsis are the benchmark, and they are a phenomenal team. And the final was just, they dismembered the Sunder Slice wagon. The wheels came off for Sunder Slice, and it didn't look like Sunder Slice had any ideas on how to get anything going offensively, because the game started with 2 turns. It was 0-2.
Yeah, they were down 2-0, traded, but then lost another couple of breaks to go down 6-2 down.
Bleeding.
One more break, and it's 8-3 at half, with Ellipsis coming out on offense in the second half, which they duly complete in 4 passes. Trades, and then it's 11-4, and then they trade from there. But by 11-4, who's counting? The game is done.
It's academic at that stage. And like the thing that I was cheering for was, you know, Sam McGuckin v James Bray down the stretch, those two battling. It never happened because there was never any circumstance where Ellipsis had to push it. And Slice were just giving over the disc way too much. And then Ellipsis were going, okay, we're just going to punch that in. And it was a comfortable game for them. Like, they never seemed like they were pressing. It looked like a training run, and it seemed like they were coasting. There was gears to come for this Ellipsis team. And they just were not pressured at all. And a credit to them, because they played the game on their terms, which is what Ellipsis is known for. Ellipsis as a club, the women too, They like to play from in front. They like to get a break early. They like to convert the break, and then they like to play from a position of strength. This Ellipsis team is just more of the same, and it's great and it's boring.
Yeah,
to be perfectly honest.
Well, what I noticed with Ellipsis is, again, like Hoss, the ease of their offense, and there's lots of little things going on, but there's a high game IQ to know the correct pass at the correct time, and not putting your receivers in bad positions, or at least, and even if you do, to then make sure you get that back into a good position. What they were the masters of was taking advantage in broken play of defenses that were not set, that were on tilt, and making your ground there. So that was the secret sauce. It was really interesting on defense because they never looked... Their D, it never looked like their D was that impressive, to be honest.
No.
But I tell you what, once they got the turn, they didn't give it back.
Yep.
So that was another impressive. And a little shout out to, so I didn't mention John O'Keefe. Obviously, he and Ollie at the back were similar to Rowan and Trongers for Hoss.
Yep.
Just the puppeteers at the back, just controlling things, moving the disc along. They were fantastic. Another little shout out, also Quixley. So Alex Quixley from NZ. I thought he was a standout player for them, particularly on defense. He made he actually didn't make the MVPs. So look, Ellipsis are another team that could have been team MVP of the tournament.
Yep.
There's 10 guys there. Quixley could have easily picked up points if anyone knew who the hell he was. So.
Okay, so I think... All right. So that's all the teams. A comprehensive performance by Ellipsis. Well done. You're the champions. That is not even controversial. The performance was... it was just like there's teams in this world that, like, in sports, that play a style that is uncomfortable. It's sweaty. And Ellipsis are a sweaty team. Like they just put you in a position where it's like, this is gross. Like, we don't get many chances. If we turn it over, they're going to convert it, and we end up, we make one or two mistakes, and then, well, the game's done, and we trade it out. And it's a great thing for a team to be able to execute that game plan, because that's a hard game plan to execute, because it relies on a level of perfection and a level of execution that not everyone can rise to. But Ellipsis continue to just have this team that is hard to beat. It's hard to even get them uncomfortable, let alone beat them. So looking forward to 2026, the challenge is there for the rest of Australia. Can anyone touch Ellipsis with a 10-foot pole? Because at the moment, it seems like they are just head and shoulders above the rest of everyone else.
Yeah, and maybe that's why there was the calls from other captains and coaches to say Sunder should go AB, because they want to see that competition. Maybe they're just looking at the final and going, well...
we want something better to watch.
Yeah, and if you're losing Gav and Tex... you're losing that whole generation is pretty much out. You've got Jimmy left and maybe Xavier and maybe a couple others, but
Rory Connell. That's about it.
Well, Rory, if he suits up again, remember he's coming back from break. So so it is hard to see who's coming next. But the secret sauce again is an offense that's resilient and doesn't rely on a few players, and that to me sums up success at this year's Nationals. So
it did seem like an evolution. 2-3 years ago, it was like Tom Tullett every second pass, whereas we saw like a broader offense now, like where it wasn't just John O'Keefe every second pass, Ollie Loughnan, and then they're bouncing it off other players. So there was more nuance and more, and it made it harder for a defense, because instead of just running your best dude at their best dude, you had to be a lot more You had to bring pressure across the field, and teams couldn't do it. Not on Ellipsis anyway, because they offensively they didn't seem like they ever got into a hole where. And this is the kind of comparison between Ellipsis and Sunder Slice. Sunder Slice seemed to get in the hole because they were looking for Alex Gann, and Alex Gann was either marked out of the game or they're on the sideline. And it was like, okay, well, how are they getting it to Alex Gann? Alex Gann's made a little bit of a cut, and now it hasn't worked. Okay, what's plan B? There's no plan B. Oh, it's the highest of all. Oh, my God, what are we doing? And sitting in the armchair, I'm like, oh, dear, this is not good.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in the final, they scored 8. 4 of them were scored by James Bray, 3 by Rory O'Connell, and 1 by Mark Wee. So, and their distributed, so their assists, Dr. Fungus, Solomon Merowitz's mum, Nick Lely for 3, and Alex Gann for 2, Mark Wee 1. So that was it. So that was their sole scoring goal and assist. So, look, there's no doubt that and it's not just Sunder Slice who struggle with this. I think Fyshwick, that's got to be their big learning from this, to get a resilient offence. And also Manly, as their young players develop, what can they learn? Can they, because there's so many of these under 24s now going into goeies, can they make that a feature of their offence? It's hard. It's secret sauce stuff.
Yeah.
Can the Crocs develop an offence that is really resilient with girls and the boys? They've got the talent there.
Yeah.
Can they make it a stingy offence that is not going to give the disc back?
Yep.
That's going to define their success this year. And we're going to see it, Dan, next month.
On Ulti-TV.
On Ulti-TV.
At the London Invite. I think just kind of closing this out and the thoughts that we've got around the game and where it's going. Okay, you're heading into training camp, Greenie. It's October, and you're starting to think about the Nationals campaign. You're going with generic opens team number 3. What kinds of things would you do in training to kind of promote that offense that you're talking about?
Yeah, well, look at Ellipsis women. They've got their Battlestar Galip to Lip, where they're trying to empower every player. They're trying to raise the baseline level of throwing and empower every player. And let's look at our own club here with I-Beam. They had an asymmetric distribution of contribution on their offense, defensive offense, offensive offense. They were trying to run it through 2 fewer players. They need to open that up. They need to make sure that everyone is contributing in some way, and everyone knows when it's their turn. Jack Humphreys, I'll shout out there, was kind of always open, but never thrown to. And that was partly his fault for some strange cutting shapes, but also partly the fault of the throwers for not recognising, okay, I know this is where Jack comes in now. I can get it to him, and then I've got to return pass here, moving it that way.
Yep.
Yeah.
And for me, because offense, I'm of the opinion that offense is easy. Or it's easier, shall I say. That's probably a better way of putting it. Easier than defense. I think that for defenses, they need to continue to work those fundamentals, because there was some high-profile players at the tournament who just had very poor fundamentals on their positioning, how they were thinking about playing defense. Nothing to take away from their athleticism, because they're top-tier athletes. But athleticism only gets you so far when you're playing against other top-tier athletes. You gotta bring something extra to your defense, and part of that is teamwork, and part of that is some sort of plan. And getting in a foot race with people, that don't work no more. You got to bring something extra. So I think, making sure your fundamentals as a team are good, and that means you're playing from the same fundamentals. And the defenses, you've got to find a way to bring pressure, whether that's making plays or getting stall pressure or something. You've got to get some pressure from somewhere. And the successful teams manage to do that. They manage to create situations and I'll take Ellipsis because they're the champions. they managed to push Sunder Slice into this strange situation where they pushed the disc to the sideline, but they weren't getting any depth down the field. So they got the width. And then once they got the width, they were on the sideline. They're playing on half the field. They took away Alex Gann, and all of a sudden, it was like a house of cards for Slice just collapsed. There was nothing left. And it's like, okay, good defense, excellent defense. Take something from that if you're another team, because if you could create that, because it was stall pressure that came from good tactics where, okay, we're going to take away half the field, we're going to get it to the sideline, we're going to let it go a little bit to the sideline, and then we're going to hold it there to create stall pressure. Like, that was cool. That was good to watch. And I'm keen to see, like, can teams continue to make strides, because match defense is still the pressure defense. When you need a turn, match defense is where it's at. And zones were good wrinkles. We saw some zones that had good dividends in bringing a wrinkle and enforcing teams to adjust, but it's not your bread and butter. And down the stretch, it's not what you have to rely on. So those are my thoughts. I don't know. What do you think about all of that?
Oh, just a quick note that I-Beam had no choice but their go-to was a 3-3-1 transition. And it's because they just gave up. They didn't have the match. They couldn't do match pressure.
Yep.
Not with the slowness of some of their guys. They're giving up a lot of pace against other teams. And also they're giving up height. So they lack height and pace, but also with their rookies who are on the D-line, they're still learning the art of positioning on defence. And as we mentioned beforehand, defence is harder than offence.
Yep.
And you learn it through your entire career. You never stop learning D.
Yeah.
You can pick things up on offence, and of course you're going to improve it on offence as well. But I think defence is where it's at for your gains, game IQ.
Yeah, and I remember watching Lockie McDonald Macca from Heads of State years ago, watching how he prepared to play defence, and this is when he was probably the best defender in the country. And I kind of took notes because I was like, how does he do what he does? And you would actually be surprised at how structured playing defense is. He wasn't doing anything fancy. It was just 2 or 3 simple rules, and then a lot of practice in positioning and movement, and willingness to run. I think those were probably the key things that he was doing at that time that I think was best captured by Chile at this tournament. They seem to have the hottest match defense, where their defenders were bringing heat and teams were finding it hard to move the disc against them. Take nothing away from Ellipsis, of course, but it just seemed like Chile had that bit of edge or a bit of go forward on their defense. So, do you have any closing thoughts to wrap this one up, Greenie? We've had a really good chat here today, and I've loved this.
Yeah, I love sharing the fact. It's just good to remind us what great a spectacle that was brought to us. In this case, we're talking about the men's division, and it's clear that every team there has got plenty of upside.
Yeah,
and can bring something new and improvement to their game. And I'm particularly looking at that 9 to 12 bracket. I think there's elements there that will make it. They can improve so much for next year and
that's a great
next
point.
Few years.
A couple of years ago, there was a couple of teams that were down at the bottom, and you couldn't see a way out. Like you were just like, yeah, they'll come next year, and they're going to come in that bottom bracket. But next year, if those 3 teams, you wouldn't be surprised if they're not. Like it seems like the top end is very, very set right now, with Ellipsis being a benchmark that very few teams are even able to get in shouting distance of. But down the bottom, like that, the bottom of the division seems to be rising at a pace faster than the top, and it's gonna throw up some interesting matchups through those kind of quarterfinal, through pool play, especially where. And we saw it this year where you lose your first match, and oh my god, now it's hard. So, cool.
If you're a coach or if you're a captain, and you are looking at your October, you're starting the season, watch Ellipsis, watch Hoss, watch what makes them resilient, and then take what you will from that. And can you find the secret sauce that's going to bring it in 2026?
Yep, and like Colonel Sanders, they're probably going to keep it a secret because at the moment they are the hardest team to beat in the country. How's that for a segue? Let's wrap it up there, Greenie. Thank you very much for joining me today. This has been Backhand Compliments, and I'm not sure when we'll come back. If you would like to hear me and Greenie chew the fat over some topic in Ultimate, make sure you leave a comment. Because I think at this stage our plan is to return for the mixed season, but we'll have a chat about that off air, as we might have some other ideas of things we want to cover here on the podcast. So we thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you again next time.